Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 8, P3H2O. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary and reminder of what happened within this episode. The episode opens on Prue gazing at a lake while flashing back to being there when her mother's body was removed after being killed by the demon that is in the lake. And while she is there, she sees it drown what looks like a forest ranger or like a park ranger out of its boat. And she goes to run to try to help him, but then Sam stops her and tells her to leave. She does do so, but she just leaves so that she can bring her sisters back, where they kind of start to question because the camp, which is the location of the lake, is about to be reopened, and obviously they don't want that to happen, so they speak with the owner, who says that she's no longer going to open the lake because of the most recent drowning, as she had previously thought it had been over, as no one had really gone into the lake since their mother died. Unfortunately, the camp owner ends up being killed by the demon, lured to the lake, and drowns herself, therefore she is not able to cancel the children coming. Meanwhile, the sisters find Sam and find out who Sam was as far as being their mother's white lighter, and he, to protect them, uses memory dust to make them forget, so they leave. The next day, Leo then comes to remind them that they need to go to the lake, and Piper has poison ivy, so she stays back while her sisters go to the lake. And basically, Phoebe waylays the kids before they can go into the water, and Prue goes to talk to Sam. And while she's at home, Piper discovers letters from Patty to Sam, which show that they were in love, and that is when she orbs alongside Leo to go to the lake. And while they're at the lake, she reveals who Sam was to their mother and that he's blaming himself and he clipped his wings out of guilt, which is why he is no longer a white lighter and he's been waiting there all that time to try to protect them because he knew they would come one day. And then basically what happens from there is that the memory dust is used on the children. Phoebe gets a premonition which shows exactly what their mother's plan was in her final moments from Sam, who had been frozen at the time, so he hadn't seen it. And then they realize that the one who has to be at the end of the dock is going to be Prue, because the power to freeze did not work against the demon. But basically, when Prue is getting ready, Sam ends up seeing that the demon is coming up behind her instead of where it is expected, and he allows the demon to possess him, holds on to the charging cables while Prue essentially electrocutes him. And this, of course, defeats the demon, but also ends up with Sam dying. However, that is not a sad thing because we see him and Patty walking off into the distance, finally reunited, where they can be happy in the afterlife. Meanwhile, this, of course, brings back Piper and Leo's feelings, and Leo says that he's still in love with her and he can't get over her, which is why they need to stop working together. And Piper says she doesn't want to say goodbye, and he says then don't before orbiting away. And then Dan comes to the door, the back door, and she basically goes to have breakfast with him. So now that we've been reminded about what happens within the episode, it's time to rank the episode. As always, we rank on our mostly objective list, followed by our personal list. Alright, so this episode had a lot of our mostly objective rank values that I felt applied to the episode. So we'll start with the character introduction. So we have a multi-episode supporting character introduction in Samuel Wilder, or Sam, who was, again, Patty's white lighter, and her love interest after Victor, who she was currently seeing at the time of her death, though none of the sisters knew about it. He is So the episodes that he appears in are scattered throughout the entire series. He only appears in, I believe, 3 of the episodes throughout the series. Because it's such a few number of episodes, that's why I'm considering him multi-episode rather than multi-season supporting. And that is worth 2 points. We then, of course, get our multi-episode supporting character development, which has to do with Jack, who is newly employed at Buckland's with Prue, and is revealed to be able to speak Japanese. And that's also worth 2 points. We then have our multi-season supporting character development, which is where we are learning more about Patty. We learn that she died at Camp Skylark. We learn that Prue witnessed them removing the body, though not the death. We then, of course, learn that Patty was romantically involved with Sam, her white lighter. So a bit of on-screen character development for her, and also by extension Sam as well. And that's worth 3 points. We then have a successful emotional impact, which of course is the scene of Sam dying, and by this point, even though they were hostile at first when they first met him, blaming him for their mother's death after finding out how much he loved her, that he clipped his wings for her, that he's been waiting there to try to save them all this time, a bond forms, and so they are obviously very distressed by his death. And then also because they are able to see these things, being witches themselves, they then are able to see the happy ending where he meets Patty again and they walk off together, essentially into the sunset, across the beach, into the water, where they will, in theory, live happily ever after life. But obviously, we do know also that he does recur, which of course means it won't actually be that, but the impact of his death scene and then the happy ending of him walking away with the love of his eternity, essentially, is a very touching scene and therefore worth another 3 points. We then have our multi-season main character growth, which is basically all of the sisters kind of getting closure for their mother's death and being able to move on from it as they are able to defeat the demon that killed her. And particularly Prue, it's shown in this episode that she does not like being compared to her mother or told she looks like her, that she's anything like her. And that's because she feels kind of like she's starting to walk in her footsteps, unsuccessful emotional relationships, potential to die young, because now they are witches as well, that she looks like her, etc., etc. And so and at the beginning, she isn't even able to go onto the dock just because of the memories holding her back. And then obviously at the end, we get her facing the demon that killed her mom, being able to kill it, and being able to, of course, walk on the dock that her mother had gone on. And that is worth 4 points. And then last positive, oh wait, no, not last positive. There's still a couple more, sorry. So we've got world building, which of course is the introduction of memory dust. And also, this is the first episode in which we see that side-along orbing is possible, that up till now Leo has been orbing, and this is the first time that he has taken someone else with him in order to fast travel to somewhere where they are needed, which is of course bringing Piper alongside him to the camp so that she can inform her sisters about the relationship that she discovered between Patty and Sam. And that is worth 4 points. And then now our final positive of this episode is our main relationship developments. We start with Piper and Dan. They're kind of in their honeymoon phase. They talk on the phone all the time, even though they live right next door. And they'll literally be on the phone, eating breakfast over the phone together instead of just walking I believe Prue says 20 feet to the next door neighbor's house where they could actually eat together. And he, of course, is there. And when she gets like poison ivy, he comes over with calamine lotion alongside the cereal at the end of the episode so that they can have breakfast together. But then we also get a little bit more Leo back. We obviously have Leo and Piper. They start a little hostile at the start of the episode, but then he's unable to heal her poison ivy, and he tells her that that he can only heal when the elders want him to, and that he believes that there is a reason why he wasn't meant to heal her. Then, while she's doing the laundry, she finds the letters and they realize that's probably the reason. And they read the letters that Patty wrote to Sam together, which, of course, is a relationship very similar to hers. And she even mentions how she wishes, like, how the letters sound like they could have been from her, and he wishes that they were. And then at the end of the episode, while they're fighting the demon, Leo and Piper kind of parallel Sam and Patty, where Leo runs to try to save them on the dock after getting worried about them, and Piper gets distracted, turning to freeze him, which is exactly what happened to Patty and Sam before she died. We then also get that he kind of after they've returned home after the camp, Piper sees in the hallway the blue light that indicates orbs. She then makes an excuse to Phoebe to leave the room, and Phoebe is distracted and doesn't notice. And then she goes to the kitchen to make tea, where Leo then basically confesses that he's still in love with her. He can't get over his love for her. And if they can't be together, then he also can't work with her because it would be too hard and he may end up like Sam, where he may lose her because he's distracted by how much he loves her. And she tells him that she can't say goodbye. And then he tells her, then don't, and orbs away. And then when Dan comes to the door pretty much immediately after this to the back door, which goes into the kitchen, she basically at first tries to reject going to eat breakfast, saying she doesn't have an appetite, but then he convinces her and she does go with him, which I think kind of shows a less surety in Dan than the beginning of the episode, though obviously not little enough to actually stop her from going, but I think she's now a little more conflicted than at the start. And then of course we have at the very, very end of the episode Jack covering for Prue because she's been gone and would have missed a deal otherwise, and then she asks him to dinner. Now on to the negatives. So first off, I feel that there was a little bit of character regression in terms of Prue. So From Fear to Eternity was an episode in season 1, and in this episode, we kind of had the exact same scenario where Prue was afraid of drowning because of the trauma left by their mother's death, and in order to defeat the demon of fear, she had to conquer her fear of drowning and gain closure with her mother's death with her mother's ghost's help. That allowed her to release her fear and then come back and fight and vanquish Barbas. And one of the key points of that episode was how Prue had never said I love you to either of her sisters because she was never able to say I love you after it was the last thing she said to her mother, and she had gotten over that as well, where she was able to now say that she loved them. And it was a really, really beautiful ending. However, then in this episode, it's like all of that was erased, and suddenly she's trapped in the past, having, flashbacks at the lake that she apparently frequently visits, though we've never seen it before that she's visited. But apparently off screen and between all the demon hunting, she's been going there. We then see how she's afraid to go to the end of the dock, still afraid of the water, even though that was what she had conquered, the fear she had conquered in that previous episode. And then instead of the she can't say I love you, it's the she can't stand being compared to her mother because of fear of walking in her footsteps. And then we, of course, have her defeating her fear of water, and then her mother's ghost, only her mother's ghost in this case is walking off with Sam. But either way, like it felt like we were repeating kind of the same beats that we'd already covered in that previous episode, and so that, of course, is worth -1. We then have a little bit of a main relationship regression in that Prue and Jack have been flirting for a couple of episodes now. She had a drink with him. It seemed like they were together. He's having his twin brother, you know, swap places to kind of see if there were any red flags or anything like that going on. And now in this episode, she's apparently completely rejected him, and she said that they couldn't work together and see each other, so he decided one out of the two after being rejected was worth it and got the job at Buckland's. And so at the beginning of the episode, we're kind of in a regression from where we had been at the end of the last episode. However, by the end of the episode, she is agreeing to go to dinner with him, so that kind of cancels out, but that is a -3. And then the last but not least, well, actually, probably the least, not points wise though, we have our continuity error, which is basically in this episode, they get hit with memory dust, which is the first time we see the use of memory dust within this series. However, memory dust does come back later. And in this episode, when Leo comes and realizes that they've been affected by something that's memory altering, the conversation that they have says that he got the memory dust or the something that he used to erase their memories from Patty. And that is why they have to then go and re-find Sam so that they can basically use the memory dust that he got from Patty on the children to stop them from going into the water. However, memory dust recurs, and at that point, it's a white lighter tool that can be used by white lighters, and therefore they could have just gotten it from Leo. They didn't have to go and find Sam. And obviously that's something that they forgot that they had done in this episode where they said he got it from Patty. In future episodes, it's just a white lighter thing, and white lighters have access to this memory dust in order to erase memories. So that will be an error, but that still leaves us with 14, making this a 10 out of 10 episode objectively. All right, so as a reminder of our season 2 rankings so far and our mostly objective ranking, in first place we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, She's a Man Baby, a Man, They're Everywhere, P3H2O is in 5th place, then we have Morality Bites, That Old Black Magic, and The Devil's Music. Side note as to why it's on 5th place is on the mostly objective list, if more than one episode gets the same score, they're just ranked in episode order. Now, as to my personal ranking, this episode is one of my favorites of this season, so it does rank highly. And I would say I like almost everything about it. I love that Leo's back because honestly, being a rewatcher, you know the end game. So as much as I do like Dan, I'm pro Leo because I know that that is her end game and that is who she is going to end up with for Piper. So I like that he's back. I like that they've had a moment. I know that they're going to keep dragging on the Piper Dan thing for, I think, the entire season. So they're not quite making full progress yet, but I do like seeing him again after he was absent for, 1 or 2 episodes. I can't remember, but anyways, nice that he's back again. Obviously, like how meaningful the episode is with all of the sisters being able to confront their mother's death and gain some closure from that and defeat the demon that killed her so that they are able to grow and move on and develop from this. I like that it's laid the groundwork for Patty and Sam being in a romantic relationship, as we know that becomes significant in season 4. I also like I also like kind of like the atmosphere vibes of the camp with like being in nature with the lake. I like how sweet Dan is bringing Calamine lotion for Piper. I like pretty much everything about it. I also love the ending of Patty and Sam walking off together to live a happy afterlife, at least as we believe it to be so far. And I do always get a little emotional when I do see that scene because it is such a touching and beautiful scene. The only negative really that I find from this episode, or rather 2 negatives, is a semi-negative, is the Jack Prue kind of subplot is so briefly there that I literally forget about it. I literally forgot about it until just now. And so that obviously isn't great. But the other negative I felt personally was just like it felt like we were retreading old ground that we had already covered. And I mean, such a traumatic and such a big event. Obviously, it's not something that you get over just once, so I understand why they revisited it and why they had us going over the closure again. But I just feel like from Fear to Eternity, we addressed this. We thought we had gotten closure. We thought we had moved on from it, like conquered our fears and such. And then this episode just basically almost retread the same ground. Like I said in the objective, it was Prue having flashbacks and afraid of the water, which, of course, in the From Fear to Eternity, it was fear of drowning in the water. So we've got our water fear still there, which was supposedly released already. We then, of course, have the connection to the mother and losing the mother, which is, of course, the flashbacks. And in the From Fear to Eternity, that was the source of the drowning fear that Prue had. We then have the facing of a demon, the needing to overcome that fear, which of course is Prue going down to the dock and near the water in order to defeat it. And then we even had Patty's ghost at the end. Although in From Fear to Eternity, she was helping Prue out of the water as she released her fear, and in this case, she was walking off with Sam. But overall, really retreading old ground, just in a different way. And just like From Fear to Eternity is one of my favorite episodes, this one, like I said, is one of my favorites of the episode, but I am ranking it a 9 out of 10. Which does put it into first place so far on our personal ranking list for season 2. So P3H2O in first place, then Witch Trial, The Painted World, They're Everywhere, She's a Man Baby, a Man, The Devil's Music, Morality Bites, and then in 8th we have That Old Black Magic. Which brings us, of course, to our series ranking so far, and once again, we have our mostly objective ranking and our personal ranking. Starting with our mostly objective ranking, season 1 ended at 73.18%, and season 2 so far has earned a score of 65 out of 220. On the personal ranking side, we ended out season 1 at 71.50%, and season 2 so far has only earned a score of 37 out of 220. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 8, P3H2O. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.